Hi everyone, Gabriel Nassif, and today I'm bringing to you the top 45 rated cards from Modern Horizon 3, according to me, and with a little help from Twitch chat, as well as a little influence from Aspiring Spike and Young Dingo stream. They've been streaming some paper Modern Horizon 3 already, so that was cool to watch. And yeah, I will put the link to the document in the description. I'm going to go over every card that got a 6 or better, all the way to only one card that got the rating of 9. So, yeah, that's still 45 cards. We rated a lot of the cards, some got a 3, 4, 4.5, 5, etc. But decided to do the cutoff at 6 or better. That's still 45 cards, and there's about 7 tiers, from 6 all the way up to 9. Um, so yeah, let's get right into it. So we have all the cards that got a 6. That's card 45 all the way to 31. The first one is Wrath of the Skies. That's the energy sweeper. Pretty ideal to get rid of tokens. Amulet in the matchup against like Amulet Titan. Good against Urza Saga. Actually hits enchantments as well. And a nice thing is that against the Yogg deck, it's going to get their Cauldron. One of the problems was a card like Supreme Verdict is you get their board, but they're really good at rebuilding, especially if they have the Cauldron in play. They can pretty much pop off again the next turn, and that card's going to hit that. You might play it just as a sweeper or maybe in a dedicated energy deck, but I think that card is quite nice, versatile, and could see some play. We also have another white card, White Orchid Phantom. Great hate bear, tons of good lands in modern. Powerful effect to put on a creature. Works well with Leonine Arbiter. It can also hit your own lands, so you can combo it with Flaxstone of Trocare to ramp yourself. And you might see it be played in a Death and Taxes deck or just as a sideboard card. Potentially combos with Omnath too can ramp you, so nice potential, nice effect to have access to. Cards like Cleansing Wildfire have seen play, even sometimes Geomancer's Gambit, and this could just be much better in see play in the right colors. It's the same colors as Flaxstone of Trocare, so that part's nice. We also have Ugin's Binding at 6. The front side, the 3 mana card, not super exciting. You don't get to cantrip draw a card, but the 7 mana effect, the quote unquote flashback effect, is kind of appealing. Could be a main deck card, could be a sideboard card in the Eldrazi decks, maybe in an affinity deck as well. So yeah, not an effect that's super impactful in a lot of matchups, but nice one to have access to, and could definitely swing games. Tied with these cards, you have Sorin House Markov, the flip one of the planeswalkers. I was not super sold on it. I think chat pushed me to rate it a little higher. It feels a little too middle of the road, kind of weird card to fit in a deck, but powerful effect. Technically you could I think turn 3 people with Green Shoal, Nourishing Shoal. If you have that in play, cast 2 Nourishing Shoal and just flip it, kill them right away. But without even going so extreme, it might be just good enough and have good stats enough to see some play. I'm not super sold though. Another card I'm not super sold on is Shifting Woodland, a card a lot of people were really hyped about and had higher in their ratings. I only gave it a 6. I think the cost is not free. Anytime you play a land that has a downside that only taps for 1 color of mana in modern, it can be tough to make room for it. Even in a deck like Yogg that has fairly clean mana, it's still a cost, especially if you're going to want to fit Phyrexian Tower in your mana base. And the Delirium effect is nice, but not trivial to set up. As to decks that are specifically built around that card, I'm always going to be a little skeptical if you're focusing too hard on the graveyard in a format like Modern. You're opening the door, to get hated on by cards like Endurance, Relic of Progenitus, even maybe Rest in Peace. So I'm not super sold, but still Has potential, not a super high cost, might see play in small numbers in some decks, maybe one off in Titan, one off in Yogg. So still decent card, and I could just be wrong, and it enables some good combo decks. A little opposite of this card, just kind of value bread and butter cards. Sevin's Reclamation could be a nice fit in a deck like Omnath. If we assume that Omnath doesn't get power crept, it brings back Teferi, it brings back Fable, Ren and 6, a fetch lands, it ramps you, and people, not me really, I'm not sold on Cosmic Rebirth, but a lot of Omnath players do play Cosmic Rebirth already, and I think that card, even though it's not instant speed, is probably an upgrade just because of the extra value. You can also surveil the card, flash it back, so that part is kind of nice. New card uh, comes from us, I want to say from Legacy, sees a bit of play in Legacy, is Recruiter of the Guard. Sets up some nice combos with the new Luren. It fetches Grief and Solitude, fetches cards like Stoneforge Mystic, the new the new guide. So tons of great target for the Recruiter. Perhaps a little mopey, and you might not be able to get enough value out of the body to make it worth it, but it is a nice blank target. You could get a flicker away, so maybe just play it in a Hate Bear kind of deck. So tons of potential, tons of possible use, and a card that kind of proven itself in the past. A new card now, Nulldrifter, maybe should be a little higher rated, but it is nice. 7 mana, combos with Ugin's Labyrinth. We're going to talk about that card a lot, but also a cheapish ability with the Evoke. You can also potentially combo it with Dress Down, turn 2, Dress Down, turn 3. You evoke it, stays in play, and you get to attack with an Annihilator creature. So definitely has potential in these Eldrazi decks. Another card that has potential in the Fenny deck is Kappa Cannoneer, also from Legacy, sees play in Legacy, so I don't know why I wouldn't see play in Modern Affinity. The problem is that one of my least favorite decks, really, I feel like that deck's just too one-dimensional, too easy to hate on, and I'm not sure the way it gets better is by having these extra cool threats, expensive threats. Kind of just have, I want to say, a structural issue because of cards like Force of Vigor, and now you even have Meltdown that's legal in the format, which could be another headache for these artifact decks. But still powerful card, got a 6. Next is, I talked about it, Guide of Souls, which is one of the cards that can enable Primal Prayers combo, the new Alluran. So that card's kind of exciting. You can maybe win some fair games with the pump ability. And yeah, that card plus a bounce creature can give you infinite life already if you have Primal Prayers in play. And just one of the combo pieces of these decks. Next, we have a removal spell, Galvanic Discharge. Could see play with other energy cards, could be fine on its own. You kill typically a Ragavan or a Bowmaster, you get to accumulate 2 energies, meaning next time around you can deal 5 damage, etc. So a nice removal spell. Obviously competes with Lightning Bolt and Unholy Heat, so it has tough competition, but kind of an interesting card. Another interesting one is Sonian Nightmare, the new recurring nightmare. Cheaper, a little more narrow at first. You can only bring back a creature that costs 3 or less if you didn't generate extra energy, but it is 1 mana cheaper, and it could see play as, a 1 or 2 offs in a deck like Yogg, even though I'm not sure Yogg really needs that effect or has room for it. It could be more of a build around too, whether you're just trying to loop cheap value creatures or eventually building up the energy and bringing back something more expensive. But yeah, really cool card and potentially good build around. Another card I'm excited about, I joked about it in my last video, it's Brain Surge. Obviously sets up miracle cards like Terminus and the Time Walk. People have been talking about Bowmaster as a downside, but in some spots, you could punish them if they try to Bowmaster in response to deal the 4 damage. you're like, sure, take 4 on tap Terminus and you got extra value. So depending on how low you are, it might not even be that big of a downside. The effect is really strong. If you can fetch or shuffle your deck after Brain Surge, it can technically almost be a draw 4 for free mana. It's also just card advantage on its own, as opposed to Brainstorm. So it nets you +1 card, and it could see play in a lot of mid-range and control decks in the deck like Omnath, where typically you get a lot of lands in the mid game because of the extra lands you get from Ren and 6. Could be really nice to shuffle these lands back, be able to fetch for them again, etc., etc. So yeah, any deck, any blue deck that plays fetch lands might want to play some copies, and obviously it could bring back blue-white miracles as an archetype. Last couple sixes we have is one is Boggart Trawler / Boggart Bog, the black double face card. This one's really nice. It's a goblin for the goblin deck, meaning you can tutor for it with Matron, hit it on Ringleader. But yeah, especially tutor for it with Matron. The goblin deck is not the most consistent, and being able to tutor for your 4th mana source ramps you up to Goblin Ringleader and the other 4 drops. That can be quite nice. It's also in the good colors for the self-mail Oops All Spells deck. So it gets the nod, compared to some of the white ones where, typically the 2 Oops All Spells deck are Charbelcher, which is red-green, and then the self-mail one, which is black X. I forget exactly which colors. But yeah, that one's kind of nice, right colors, and can be a nice one-off in the Goblin deck. Not the worst creature to in the format, obviously. So gets a 6. And last 6 is a card that was actually in my top 5 last time around. Downgraded it a bit. It's the Amped Raptor. Still powerful effect, but I think maybe that was one of the cards that was a little overhyped. I talked about Aspiring Spike a lot, and he had it in his S tier, one of his 5 broken cards. I know he's played a bit with it since. I wonder what his opinion is now. But yeah, I maybe 6 is still a little low, still solid card, potentially in burn prowess. Next tier, cards that got a 6.5, 22nd through 30th. And the first one is a Johnny the Cuddle Pariah, which is just super solid card, lots of value. The flip side of the Johnny is fairly impactful. You can trigger them of playing a second one. I'm not sure it's going to quite make Cat Tribal a tier 1 modern deck, but just a nice card to have access to, lots of value for only 2 mana. Also, only 2 mana is Basking Brutescale. This card gets a high rating because it's a 2-card combo with Rosie, Cotton, something. Basically, if you play that on 2 and play Rosie on 3, you get an infinitely large Brutescale. So as long as they don't have a blocker, they die. You can combo it with a 3rd card to, deal damage or whatnot. But yeah, before that card was printed, the combo with Rosie was that 3 mana Tree Folk, which is obviously a little awkward if both your combo pieces cost 3 mana. And yeah, that card's kind of not the worst total worse on its own either. So definitely scary prospect. Turn free kill. You can combo it with maybe the Heliod deck or some other combo pieces, kind of give you more redundancy. And yeah, I think that combo has potential. Next, we have a sideboard card, Disruptor Flute. I say sideboard card, you could play it in the main, but there's a bunch of modern decks right now that are barely affected by that card. And it is a fixed Pithing Needle. The problem with Pithing Needle is that it can be reactive, meaning they play their spell, they get value out of it, and then you shut it down, so it doesn't feel quite good. You might be down a card in a lot of spots. If you play it preemptively and guess wrong, you could also be down a card. It does have the downside of not being able to be tutored by Urza Saga, which is one of the nice things with Pithing Needle. But The flexibility is super nice, and obviously it also works on spells, which Pithing Needle doesn't do. You can play it in response to a Cascade spell, and if they don't have the free mana, it gets countered. You get to see what they play first, whether it's a One Ring, a Yawgmoth, a Planeswalker, name that. So obviously that part's really strong, and I think that card's just gonna see play in a lot of sideboards. Next, we have one of these good middle of the road cards, Improv Bones. Not exactly clear if it's going to be a build around or if you're just going to throw one or two in your black decks. Just does a lot, fairly cheap, fairly aggressively costed. Kind of graveyard hate, can give you value, can be build around. You can bring back a card like Atraxa. So definitely an interesting card, a bit like a Johnny, I guess. Just 2 mana, does a bunch of stuff. And I think that card is probably going to see at least some play in Modern. Next one is a little more narrow, but also very powerful, is Grist Voracious Larva. You do need to work and somewhat build around it to make it effective. It could be one of these cards that see play in Yogg as a one-of, or it could be a build around, but once again, building around your graveyard is always scary. So I'm not super confident Grist is going to have a ton of impact, but the flip side is really powerful. Making tokens, killing artifacts or enchantments right away. Lots of good targets in Modern. So yeah, interesting card. Another interesting card is Party Thrasher. Once again, same as Emperor and Johnny a bit. It's 2 mana, it does a lot, it generates card advantage, it has decent stats, can't die to a bolt, doesn't die to a discharge either. So yeah, who knows who gonna win that card? Fair deck, Storm deck, Reanimator deck. So just has potential, and kind of a mini fable of the Mirror Breakers in some ways. Another potential build around is Psychic Frog, just good engine, 1/2 for 2 mana, draws you cards, whether it's in a Death Shadow deck. Maybe you combine it with Stamio as both card engine card advantage generating engines. Super push cards, not super trivial to kill, and yeah, just kind of cards that if you can protect it, can run away with the game on its own. Last couple 6.5s, interesting cards. One is Sundering Eruption / Volcanic Fissure. That card gets one of the highest ratings of the double face card because it's in the Charbelcher color. It's red. It's also an effect that you want to have access to in Modern in some matchups. And if you want to get a little meta and next level, you could say that if this card makes Charbelcher better and the Oops All Spells deck better, and these decks kind of dominate Modern or are tier 1, then it means you really want access to that effect in the mirror matches to slow them down, disrupt their mana. So it could be a kind of self enhancing, kind of the better it gets, the better it gets kind of a thing. Anyways, last card that made that tier is Thief of Existence. 3 mana Eldrazi, so obviously you can potentially cast it on 2. Kind of reminds you of Skyclave Apparition, or you could also describe it as a Thought-Knot Seer for permanence. The stats on it are decent. They do get to draw the card if they kill the thief, a bit like Thought-Knot Seer. And, I'm a little worried that that card's just going to be maybe compete with Matter Reshaper and be worse than Matter Reshaper in a lot of spots. It could be a 4-of, it could be maybe just a 1 or 2-of, and then you go up to 4 up to sideboard for some matchups where it's really going to shine. Maybe a matchup like Amulet Titan that's not very good at killing creatures, so not only do you get rid of their Dryad or their Amulet, but I guess it goes up to all the way to 4, right? So getting rid of the One Ring is pretty big, and just solid. Almost definitely see play. Question is like how many you play in the main, how many you play in the sideboard. All right, next tier, every card that got a 7, that's rank 13 all the way through rank 21. So tied for 13s technically. And I'm gonna lead with one of the cards I had in my top 5 last time around. dropped in the ranks a bit, but it's Glimpse the Impossible, which could be totally amazing in creativity. You cast it on turn 3, you get free science, meaning you get to untap and creativity for up to 5 just off that card. It's also cool because it's self-mailed, so technically you could self-mail an Archon, and if you're playing the Persist build, bring it back into play that way. In the late game, it can generate you a lot of card advantage. It can be a mix. It can even just give you the free silence and help you hardcast an Archon. The mana boost can be good. So I feel like that card does a lot in this archetype specifically. I'm excited to try an updated version. It could maybe see play in some Underworld Breach decks, some Storm decks. Kind of, I like to, it's kind of a running joke now, but calling cards the new Fable of the Mirror Breaker. I did that for the Scholar last time around, called it the Blue Fable of the Mirror Breaker. So, yeah, I think that card has potential, and I feel like it does a lot for only a red and 2. Another 3 mana sorcery is Buried Alive. That card, once again, anytime that something relies heavily on the graveyard, I'm going to be skeptical, but you can do a lot of cool stuff with it. You can go for value in a Phoenix deck, just bin free arc like Phoenix. You could bin 2 prized amalgam and an Archamoeba and get a lot of creatures in play that way. You could get a bunch of blood gas. You can mix and match. I was also made aware of a cool combo package of Narcomoeba, Thassa's Oracle plus Leveler. You get back Narcomoeba, and then you untap, victimize, sacking Narcomoeba, getting back Oracle and Leveler, killing your opponent. It is a lot of setup. A lot of things can go wrong, but it's a cool package. So yeah, just a lot of things you can bin with Buried Alive that can be really good. But is it reasonable to build your deck that way? I'm not so sure. We also have a bunch of Eldrazi's. We have Devourer of Destiny, which is a nice 7-drop. Any 7-drop goes up in value. It also sets up your early turns nicely. These Eldrazi decks are going to be fairly top heavy, I think, and you might have some clunky curve. So if you have Destiny in your opening hands, doubly great. You get to set up your draw a bit and imprint it to the Labyrinth as well. The 7 mana part is perfectly acceptable. It is a decent swing of a nice body and killing one of the permanents, hopefully. The other 2 Eldrazi's are Emrakul, the World Anew. That one's kind of a wild card, but obviously potentially really powerful. The way you could madness it is set it up was Urza Saga getting the cookbook. Maybe people will find other creative ways to do it, but that's one kind of somewhat obvious option. And yeah, I really don't know what to think of these cards. It was when we were going through the list in Scryfall, it was the first few cards we rated. Maybe we rated them too highly. Maybe all these Eldrazi themed cards, are just, maybe the deck ends up being kind of a bust, and then obviously all these cards should have a much lower rating. But let's be a little optimistic, I guess. The last one is Kozilek the Broken Reality. The 9-drop. It is potentially, manifest a bunch of cards, get a lot of power and toughness in play. It kind of acts as a discard spells. They have to put 2 cards of their hand into play. They get the manifest creatures, but actually kind of acting as a mind rot. You draw a bunch of cards, so kind of a massive swing. It kind of protects itself. If they have removal left in hand, you get their removal, and they have to manifest them into play. So really cool ability, powerful, and yeah, that's why it gets the high rating. Last few cards. So at 7, we also have Disciple of Freyalise / Garden of Freyalise. That one gets a high rating because, once again, it's Charbonshire colors, which the mana is actually pretty bad. You're kind of have to play off-colored ones so far if you wanted enough untapped ones. And you're somewhat low on, I've never played the Charbonshire deck, but you're somewhat low on green and red sources, which I'm assuming meant you had to mulligan a bunch. and this is just going to make the deck more consistent. It might also be a great fit for Amulet Titan. It is a card you can summon or spec for, a land you can summon or spec for, and the ability is honestly not that bad too. You might just win random games where you're flooding a bit, you draw it, and you sack your Dryad to draw a couple of cards or whatnot. So yeah, almost a little surprised they gave Titan such a gift when it's already a really solid deck, but interesting. Definitely one of the more interesting double face cards. Speaking of interesting, invert polarity, that card is, definitely raised a few eyebrows. I'm just excited to try it, see how it plays out. It's going to be tough, I think, to get a feel. Obviously, the variance is huge, and there's some spells that are not even that exciting to steal. 3 mana for cancel is a lot for modern, but the upside might be worth it. You can also maybe meme was a dedicated coin flip deck. Try to enhance your coin flip winning chances, but people have been joking. Imagine you're watching feature match at the Pro Tour or whatever, and the game comes down to whether or not you win the coin flip. One of the biggest possible swings is a Titan player casting their Titan with a Cavern of Souls, making their Titan in counter roll. So if you lose the flip, counter doesn't do nothing or doesn't do anything, you lose the game. If you win the flip, you get their Titan, get a bunch of lands on tap, probably win the game. So literally games of Magic coming down to a coin flip. Yeah, but I'm excited to try it. Maybe I'll just end up hating it when I have to play against it. Anyways, it gets a high rating for its potential brokenness. Last couple of cards are creatures. One is Nethergoyf. Just seems like all around solid. Not clear if it actually have a great home. It's not super tough to set up, but there's not a ton of modern decks that just want a creature that attacks and block, even though this one is efficient. Doesn't seem too hard to maybe bring it up to a 3/4 on turn 2, attacking for free on turn 2 for 1 mana is nice. But yeah, it does have competition with Ragavan, maybe Tamiyo. There's a bunch of go 1-drops. It's not really a combo card, and something like Ragdos Scam already potentially has Croxa, a card that can escape back from the graveyard. So I was kind of excited about that card. I'm not so sure it's going to have a great home though. We'll see. Maybe you play it with Necro Dominance just as a good cheap threat blocker. Maybe you play it in kind of a zoo deck. Maybe even play it in Scam as a beater. But yeah, I'm a little skeptical, and maybe that card should be a little lower. Last one that I actually had to go up a notch on it. We had it at 6. I put it up to 7. Is Philia, Exuberant Shepherd. The reason is Spike was playing in his Bant Bling deck, and it looked quite strong. It is kind of a much better Soul Herder. You've got some good cards to blink. You can also blink their permanents, whether it's a block or a token. So that part's really nice. Flash doesn't die to Bowmaster with the 2 toughness. Just really, really pushed. Nice proactive threat. Could maybe be good even in some Death in Texas deck. Blink your Recruiters, blink your Solitude, blink your the new Phantom Knight that attacks the mana base. So tons of decks where I could see play. Really, really good threat and really push cards. Really, really cute art too. Next, we have 2 cards at 7.5. We have Phyrexian Tower, insanely powerful land. It is legendary, but it will definitely see play in a lot of decks as at least a one of. Why I don't have it rated higher is I don't think there's that many decks that are gonna want to play more than 1 or 2. So I don't think it's going to be super realistic to have some decks built around it for trying to do Stitcher Supplier into or Bloodghast into who knows what. Doesn't sound like great deck building to me. Sounds like just too big of a hurdle. But just the fact that it's going to see a ton of play here and there, just we talk about free effects. It does stuff for colorless, so that part's not great, but just solid overall cards and can lead to some probably pretty silly draws in some spots. Yeah. Other 7.5 is Sowing Mechaspawn, one of the most interesting Eldrazi. Gets you to ram to 7. It's a trigger, so if you get it countered, obviously, you still get the effect. The kicker is kind of gravy, but could come up. And just, yeah, well-rounded Eldrazi. The Eldrazi decks, if they're good, are probably going to be blue-green. And yeah, so not much of a downside that you have to pay green mana for it, I guess. All right, on to the top 10. Cards 4 through 10. We've got a bunch of 8s. The first one is pretty much a dedicated sideboard card. It's consigned to memory. Counter a colorless spell. It's basically an upgraded Ceremonious Rejection, which has seen play at times in Modern. It's been a while though. But yeah, that card actually counters an Eldrazi and its trigger for an extra mana. There's not a ton of applications countering your own trigger. I think the only good one is Lotus Field, but you never know, maybe it'll be good. It doesn't counter something like a fetch land, but still really powerful effect. And obviously, it will be better and more important if the Eldrazi deck is actually good. Another blue card at 8, Harbinger of the Seas. The Blue Moon Merfolk turns all the non-basics into islands, whether it's in dedicated Merfolk deck or in something like Murktide. Blood Moon sees play, Magus of the Moon sees play, so that card should see play. And I mean, I've lost a lot of games to Blood Moon. I think it's one of the silliest cards in Modern, and I'm sure I'm going to lose a lot of games to Harbinger of the Seas as well, or maybe win a lot of games with Harbinger. Maybe I'll be on the other side this time. Next, we have a really powerful Eldrazi spell, Kozilek's Command. Just does a ton, tons of value, decent-ish in the mid-game, early mid-game, and can just be super impactful. Obviously, the more mana you have, you can tap Eldrazi Temple for it, which is nice. So yeah, if Eldrazi is going to be good, that card's going to be a part of it. Hence, high rating, even though once again, maybe all these Eldrazi cards end up being, a bit of a bust. A card that doesn't need much to be good, kind of self reliance, self-supplying. Tamio, Inquisitive Student, does great 1-drop, can generate a ton of value, can take over a game on its own if it goes unchecked. Maybe combos with artifact decks, whether it's Urza or an affinity deck. Even though I'm not sure affinity decks really wants too many non-artifact cards. But yeah, could see play along Psychic Frog in some kind of blue-black tempo deck, in Murktide, etc., etc. So yeah, just potentially really strong 1-drop. You don't have that many good 1-drops in Modern. Another 1-drop that got an 8 is Vexing Bubble. That one is more of a hate card. Obviously goes after Cascade spells, but also Pitch Elemental, Pitch cards, the new flares. Counters a lot of cards in Modern. There's still a lot of decks that don't have free spells, so I'm not quite sure you can main deck too many of that. But obviously you can get it with Urza Saga, and it might just wreck some strategies after sideboard and keep whether it's the element pitch elementals or the new flare in check. It's a kind of nice little safety valve, I guess, to print in Modern right now. Speaking of, in the top 10 we have Flare of Denial, which is the blue flare. I had it a little lower originally, but after seeing Spike once again play that band deck along with Modern All-Star Spyglass Siren, Calling Oracle, and Icefang Cuddle, it did look really good. The way he had it built is it was a Nadu band deck, and it was mostly value-based, and his reasoning that once you trigger Nadu a few times, draw into Solitude and Flare of Denial, you can pretty much deal with anything your opponent throw at it. You don't have to win the game right away. You can give them, a non-tap, a few more turns. Doesn't matter. If you drew 4 cards and you get to do it again the next turn, you're drawing all these interaction spells, and at this point they can't come back in the game anymore. I really like that build, and Flare of Denial looks really good in that build. Last 8, running out the top 10, is Necro Dominance. That's one of the other cards I had at 7, but it looked good in a white-black scam deck with Solitude and Grief. It's probably going to be very good in a lot of mono-black builds, whether it's like super low to the ground, kind of lots of cheap cards, dump your hand, refill, or maybe a slightly bigger build, a bit like a Coffers deck with the One Ring and Shield Dread. Triple black is tough, so you might not be able to play Demolition Fields and as many Coffers, but I could see 1 or 2 Urborg, 1 or 2 Coffers as a mana base, and just combos so well was the Black March. You can kind of do the old Firestorm trick where you draw a bunch of cards and cast a huge Firestorm. It's kind of boomer strats, but yeah, that one was March. Just draw up to however many cards you want, and before you have to discard to hand size, you fire off a huge March. The new Black Flare is also instant speed, which is nice. So yeah, that card has a ton of potential to be abused, and it could even end up being the best card in the set. On to the top 3. Tied for second, we have Flare of Cultivation and Ugin's Labyrinth. 2 ways to cheat on mana. One in mostly the Eldrazi deck, the other one in green base deck, potentially with Arboreal Grazer. And yeah, cheap mana, fast mana, always super scary. These are actually the only 2 cards that survived from my original top 5. I still think these cards might be really good. Ugin's Labyrinth mostly in Eldrazi decks, and Flare of Cultivation. I have it this high, kind of specifically for Scapeshift. I think Scapeshift is already a solid modern deck, and this Flare card could bring it to the next level. We've mentioned Grazer, but there's also another couple of cards, green 2-drops, that could be cool sack fodder. I think Spike was even playing a mono green build, was Elvish Pioneer. So he had 4 Pioneers and 4 Grazer, trying to max his odds of casting turn 2 the One Ring or turn 2 Karn. Kind of mono green Ram deck. That was an interesting take, but it might just be at its best in Scapeshift, and casting it for 3 mana is going to be perfectly fine as well. You can maybe even sack a Dryad. Sometimes your Dryad, it gets you an extra land into play, but then you're out of lands and it's kind of a brick. So getting rid of it to keep ramping could be really nice in that deck as well. And finally, at number 1, all alone, top rated at 9 out of 10 is, I just mentioned it a few seconds ago, Nadu Winged Wisdom. And once again, I saw that beautiful band deck. As a big Soul Herder fan, I've played a lot of Soul Herder in Modern. Thought it was actually quite good before Bowmaster got printed, but then Bowmaster came along and it made all these Ice Fang Coddles, walls, and whatnot just pretty miserable. And I don't think I've even tried since. I was like, there's no way this can line up well. And yeah, Nadu might bring back that archetype. You can obviously go for more dedicated combo builds, trying to kill right away, but I feel like these builds are going to be way more fragile and easy to pick apart. And as I said, I really like that banned value approach that Spike had, whereas instead to try to build and combo right away and have a lot of quote unquote bad cards in your deck, he just went for value, assuming that once he triggers Nadu a few times, he's gonna draw too much interaction, whether it's Solitude, Flare of Denial, Ephemerates to keep going, or Stoneforge Mystics to get value targets that his opponent's never going to be able to come back in the game. I could just see play in a lot of decks that can cast it and that has other creatures. Just great body, free for flying for free, pretty decent, I guess. And if they try to kill it, you at least get a little something. If somehow they try to kill it and you protect it, it's kind of a disaster. So yeah, I'm not sure if it's going to be just good in these kind of combo builds with Shuko or mid value builds like Spike had, or if it's going to see play in other decks. But at any rate, it does seem like a really scary, really powerful engine and really powerful card, and it gets it gets the #1 spot in these ratings. Well, there you have it, the 45 best cards out of Modern Horizon 3. Once again, link down below for the Google Doc, link to the two streams I did where I reviewed the cards. And yeah, as always, if you made it this far, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed that review. And if you haven't done so, definitely consider subscribing, leaving a like, leaving a comment, letting me know what you think about these ratings, which card I overrated, underrated, all that good stuff. But yeah, I'll see you all next time. Take care, everyone.